From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Peters.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, April 27th, 2 p.m. meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. We will first hear from County Counsel Margot Raison for a report on actions taken in closed session.
Good afternoon, Chairman Peters, members of the board. This afternoon in closed session, you met on items 76, 77, and 78. However, there is no reportable action.
Thank you. The County of Kern has provided notice that as a result of the declared federal, state, and local emergencies due to the COVID-19 pandemic and in light of the governor's orders, this Board of Supervisors meeting is not physically open to the public. Testimony and general public comment are accepted via email or voice message to the clerk of the board's office prior to today's meeting, and live comments via teleconference will be heard during the meeting. We'll begin by considering the consent agenda. All items listed with a CA above the items are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the public wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence, with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. A member of the public may also comment on any closed session item. At this time, I will read the consent agenda item numbers. That is 6 through 7 on page 4, items 8 through 12 on page 5, 13 through 15 on page 6, items 16 through 21 on page 7, 22 through 28 on page 8, 29 through 35 on page 9, 36 through 44 on page 10, 45 through 52 on page 11, and items 53 and 54 on page 12. Additionally, item number 47 has been pulled from the consent agenda and will be heard in numerical order. Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public wishing to speak to the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, we did receive one voice message from a member of the public wanting to address the board on item 32, so we're going to hear that message at this time.
Hi, my name is Kelly Vi, K-E-L-L-Y, V-I-E. I'm calling in regards to the Economic Development Incentive Policy, which is agenda item number 32. I have been employed by Kern County Department of Child Support Services in the Ridgecrest office since 2008. I reached the maximum incremental increase in my position in 2014. The Ridgecrest Child Support Office does not have an opportunity for advancement because of the small size. I moved to Ridgecrest from LA County in 2006 and was making more at my job in 2006 than I'm making now, 15 years later. Like other Kern County employees, we were expected to return to work in May of 2020 as essential workers to serve the Kern County citizens during the COVID-19 pandemic. At the early stage of the pandemic, there was so much uncertainty as to what we were to expect as far as dealing with the public. Keep in mind that there are other county agencies in our building and we had no control over who they were letting into the building, whether or not they were made to wear masks, did they have any symptoms that could be a common cold, the flu, COVID. We put ourselves at risk so that services could be provided to the citizens. And I can say without hesitation that I did not want to return to the office, but was asked to do so, so I did. I have a type 1 diabetic child, and there are daily struggles with that disease, even without a pandemic. Now throw in all the unknowns of what if I go to work and bring this sickness home to my immunocompromised child? What if going to my job is a factor in irreversibly harming or possibly killing my child? Believe me, there's no amount of money that you could pay me that would ever be worth that outcome, but an increase in pay could help me pay for the increased price of insulin and other diabetic supplies. They're not cheap. In fact, nothing is getting less expensive now. The price of everything is increasing. How about Kern County ride the increase wave and give its employees what they rightfully have worked for and deserved? Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, we have no more public comment concerning any consent agenda item.
Thank you. Okay. Would any members of the board like an item removed for discussion? Okay. Yeah, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda and adjourn as the Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Kern Sanitation Authority.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. We are now sitting as the Kern Sanitation Authority and will consider consent agenda, which includes item C1. Madam Clerk, is there anybody wishing to speak to this item?
No, sir.
Okay, any discussion by the board or a motion?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda for the Kern Sanitation Authority and adjourn as the Kern Sanitation Authority and reconvene as the Ford City Taft Sanitation District.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. We're now sitting as the Ford City Taft Heights Sanitation District, and we'll consider the consent agenda, which includes item C2. Is there anybody wishing to speak to this item?
No, sir.
Okay, is there a motion to approve consent agenda and adjourn as Ford City Taft Heights and reconvene as the Kern County Board of Supervisors?
So moved.
Please cast your votes.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. We have reconvened as the Kern County Board of Supervisors and will now consider item number 3, public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name. Is there anybody wishing to speak under public presentations?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have one member of the public, Darlene Wells, would like to address the board. Ms. Wells, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you have 2 minutes to address the board. Darlene Wells, if you would like to address the board, you need to unmute your phone by pressing *6, and you will have 2 minutes to address the board.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, go ahead and speak, caller.
Yes, I'm a resident of Rosamond, and I have some concerns about the area out here. We are increasing rates tremendously, and we are not getting services that's being provided to the community. Also, our taxes have went up tremendously. I am a widow. I lost my husband in December. He was a Marine and was unable to get a rating to help my taxes. We voted not to have sewage and water bill put on our taxes during the pandemic. This board out here, they initiated the factors and put that on our taxes. I'm also paying more money as far as my trash is concerned than residents that's been out here for quite some time, and I don't understand that. We feel like there's a Bell California going on out here. I am a single person, and I have no one else in the household, and I have one income. So we need tumbleweeds picked up. We need trash picked up. We're not getting the services, but yet still, our rates are constantly going up on our tax bill. And we feel like we should have town hall meetings so we can express ourselves about our concerns. We have homes that are being built out here, and we can understand these rate increases.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. We'll now consider board item number 4, announcements or reports. Are there any reports or comments from the board? Supervisor Scribner? Oh, sorry. Okay. We're going to go out of order briefly, and next I would like us to consider item number 47. I believe that's under General Services, and that's a request for approval of a estoppel certificate and proposed amended and restated agreement for lease with FM Baker LLC and YBG Baker LLC. And call on Mr. Jeff Hill.
Yeah, Jeffrey Hill, Chief General Services Officer. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. The item before you is an amendment to the agreement for the lease of the O.C. Sills building. The lessor is refinancing the loan on Monday, May 3rd, 2021, and the current action would result in the agreement taking effect today. If the lessor enters into a new lease with the county prior to May 3rd, it would cause a technical breach of the financial agreement between the lessor and their current lender. So we're requesting a 5-day delay in the commencement date in this agreement, and this will have no adverse effect on the county and will prevent the lessor from a technical breach with the lender. Therefore, it is recommended that your board make the finding that the project is exempt from further CEQA review pursuant to sections 15301, 15061B3 of the state CEQA guidelines, approve the estoppel certificate and amended and restated agreement for the lease of 100 East California Avenue in Bakersfield with FM Baker LLC and YBG Baker LLC for the Department of Human Services office space, with the revised commencement date of May 3rd, 2021, and authorize the chairman to sign.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Madam Clerk, is there anybody wishing to speak to this issue?
No, Mr. Chairman, and I just wanted to point out that everyone at the dais has a copy of that change to the agreement.
Great, thank you. And with that, I would ask if there are any questions from the board or if there is a motion on staff's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
And next, we will consider item number 5 under Kern County Planning and Natural Resources, a request of Chaparral Solar LLC and Rabbit Brush Solar LLC by Leeward Renewable Energy to change various permitted uses and designations and amend the circulation element of the Willow Springs specific plan. Director Oviatt.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Peters, members of the board. I'm here today with our Assistant Director of Planning and Natural Resources, Craig Murphy. If we could have the overhead. So as noted, this project is the AVEP solar project. This is a project that consists of 2 solar facilities that will generate a total of approximately 250 megawatts with 2,000 megawatt hours of energy storage capacity. It is located on the north side of Rosamond Boulevard between 130th Street West and 100th Street West, and is also bisected by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power transmission line on the east side of the project. There are 2 individual non-contiguous facilities, one that the applicant has named Rabbit Brush Solar Site in the eastern Chaparral. Together, there are 62 privately leased parcels totaling 1,406 acres of privately owned land. We have given you a complete listing of all the required actions on pages 4 and 5 of your staff report. It includes the specific plan amendments, the zone changes, conditional use permits, removal of certain items from the circulation element, and non-summary vacations of certain public access easements that would also be replaced by private. An environmental impact report was prepared for this project and is in the board chamber today in the binders in the front of the dais. Pages 11 to 25 of your staff report details the environmental process, the comments received, and responses to those comments. Your board, from the beginning of this process, has received all of the pieces of this environmental impact report. While most of these project impacts can be reduced to less than significant levels with implementation of the recommended mitigation measures, Staff has determined that implementation of the project will result in significant and unavoidable impacts, and part of those impacts are based on the cumulative impacts of the amount of acreage and projects that we have in the desert area of eastern Kern for commercial scale solar. So there would be project and cumulative impacts on aesthetics, cumulative impacts to air quality associated with temporary construction activities, cumulative impacts to biological resources for potential loss of foraging and nesting habitats for special species, and cumulative impacts to wildfire due to the project's rural location, limited infrastructure, and interference with the ability to fight wildfires. The final EIR contains 50 mitigation measures to reduce project and cumulative impacts. The proposed mitigation measure monitoring program, listing all of the mitigation measures, have been attached to your staff report as an exhibit and along with recommended findings. The staff report does include the recommendations from the Planning Commission for the conditions that heard this item on April 8th, 2021. Inside the public process at the Planning Commission, as well as at your board today, the staff report includes numerous letters of support. And the main objection to this project comes from Defenders of Wildlife. Defenders of Wildlife has placed comments in the draft EIR, spoke at the Planning Commission, and yesterday provided us with a continued letter as well as an accumulated summary report of information for our consideration regarding the mitigation for the Swenson's hawk. We have provided your board with an addendum that addresses this. Defenders of Wildlife believe that because of the numerous renewable energy projects developed in the Antelope Valley, and they are including the Los Angeles side as well as Kern County side, they believe this is contributing to ongoing cumulative loss and fragmentation of wildlife habitat. They believe that we should have a regional approach, including the county being the lead for a regional conservation strategy for specifically the Swenson's hawk. They believe that this is a requirement of CEQA, and they have raised this issue repeatedly. There is, as noted in your addendum and as noted in the environmental impact report, the intention of CEQA is for the project's impacts to be analyzed on the environment. And there is no requirement that an individual renewable energy project must generate a regional conservation strategy. The EIR identified the setting, including species, disclosed the planned, existing, and permitted renewable energy projects, and concluded that cumulative impacts of the proposed project on all species, not just the Swenson's hawk, would be significant and unavoidable for the loss of foraging or nesting habitat, and there are several mitigation measures recommended. However, the proposed project site is a small percentage of available Swenson's hawk foraging habitat. And as noted in your staff report, none of this is agricultural land. It is not identified as prime farmland, farmland of statewide importance, or unique farmland, which, as your board knows, is a primary foraging and nesting area for the Swenson's hawk in the desert. There are no Joshua tree woodlands. There is no preferred forage ground cover. It's not, as I noted, actively farmed. The closest nest tree was found approximately 2 miles away, and the nest was reported to be inactive. The area to the east of the Chaparral facility has been degraded by evidence of heavy grazing, and the project and its surrounding desert scrub and grassland habitat is not the current preferred foraging habitat of Swenson's hawk. It's not likely the project would result in loss of that habitat, and compensatory mitigation for foraging habitat has been determined not to be necessary. We did make a finding, however, that there are cumulative impacts to all of, given the loss of 1,406 acres in this area, along with the many other thousands of acres that have been converted to commercial scale solar as well as wind in the area. There are Joshua trees on this project, and there are additional mitigation requirements under the Fish and Game Commission's emergency take regulation adopted for solar energy projects that will require mitigation for loss of the Joshua trees. And those Joshua trees, as shown in the EIR biological surveys, have shown that they are also a co-benefit for the Swenson's hawk as well as other bird species. In addition, the applicant has provided you with, in your addendum, a response to the many biological assertions made in the Defenders of Wildlife submission from yesterday. And they note that they have made a voluntary agreement with both the National and the Kern Audubon Societies to benefit nesting and foraging of Swenson's hawk in the Antelope Valley through support and funding for the development of a conservation plan and conservation fund. Those types of plans are generated by developers. In this case, there are more than one solar developer who is contributing, and the conservation plan will set forth strategies to maintain or increase the population of the Swenson's hawk and will support landowner stewardship programs and acquisition of conservation easements to land identified in the plan. It is not the requirement under CEQA that we as lead agency initiate such a conservation plan or otherwise support it, and no conservation plan has been brought before your board for your direction that we participate in this. Therefore, this is a voluntary agreement that does show the commitment of the applicant to being part of a regional solution. Staff concludes that the extent of analysis for the Swenson's hawk, as well as all species, has been satisfied by this final EIR. We see no changes to mitigation that need to be made, and we would like to note that the whole of the record has extensively responded to the Defenders of Wildlife's comments that have been raised on numerous occasions. Staff has reviewed this project in its entirety, of course, for a recommendation. We do note that we have added the new cumulative impact charge to this project. This project is part of the 10 projects that your board directed be given consideration since they were already being processed. This project includes battery storage, which will be assessed the normal taxes. As well, the cumulative impact charge would be a one-time charge on net acreage at $620 per net acre. It is estimated that it would produce somewhere between a lump sum between $1 million and $892,000 under as a cumulative impact charge for the impacts of the project in combination with all other projects and the fact that the solar tax exclusion does not have them contributing what is needed for the general fund in order to keep the surrounding communities, in this case, this community, the closest community is Willow Springs and Rosamond, from declining. The findings and other economic benefits have been provided in your staff report. The applicant is here today and will be making a presentation on the project after my presentation and can review many of the other benefits that they are bringing. At this time, I am prepared to read the staff recommendation in the staff report when you are ready for that consideration. This is a well-designed project. They have mitigated all of their impacts. They are located in an area that we could say is actually infill for solar. There are many solar projects along this section of Rosamond Boulevard. They have avoided impacts on existing residences, and staff is recommending approval of this based on the Planning Commission's recommendation. That completes my presentation. I would ask that you have the applicant make their presentation, and I'm always available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the applicant would like to make their presentation. I'd like to hear it.
So, Mr. Chairman, we do have the Mark Osterholt representing the applicant, who is going to make a PowerPoint presentation virtually, and Craig Murphy will advance the slides for him. So, Mr. Osterhold, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you can begin your presentation.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Good afternoon, Chairman Peters and members of the board. My name is Mark Osterholt, and I'm the Director of Project Development for the AVEP Solar Project. I want to take a moment to thank Director Oviatt and the planning staff for their efforts in completing the EIR and recommending approval of the project in their staff report. I brought with me today a team of experts who are prepared to address your questions. We do ask that we're provided time to address questions or issues that are discussed during the public comment period as well. So today I'll discuss how the AVEP project is well sited. It'll create jobs and economic benefits for Kern County. I want to thank the board for hearing our project permit request today, and I respectfully request your approval. Next slide. But before I discuss the AVEP project, I want to let you know that we're now proudly a part of Leeward Renewable Energy, a leading U.S.-based power company who, as of March, acquired the first solar development team and the project portfolio. And because the team members moved over to Leeward along with the project, the same team members will continue to represent AVEP Solar and continue to manage development of the project. Leeward also plans to not only develop and construct, but will also own, manage, and operate AVEP. Next slide, please. So although we're new, we're under a new company, this team is no stranger to developing solar projects in Kern County. Our team has been developing projects in California for over a decade and is one of the leaders in the state with about 4,000 megawatts serving California, including 19 power plants in operation today. This includes the 5 projects we've developed right here in Kern County that have been in operation since 2015. And once again, we're excited to collaborate again with Kern County on the AVEP project. Next slide. So you've already heard the basics of the project from the county planning staff, but what I want to emphasize is that this is a very viable project. And in fact, Rabbit Brush Facility already has a power purchase agreement with Central Coast Community Energy and Silicon Valley Clean Energy for 100 megawatts. And the Chaparral facility is also being actively marketed. Construction on Rabbit Brush is expected to begin later this year, and operations will begin in mid-2022. Next slide. The most important message I want to communicate today is that the AVEP project, which is outlined in green on the map, is very well sited as it's virtually surrounded by existing and approved renewable energy projects. It's essentially an infill project. Because of this, AVEP will also be able to leverage existing transmission lines. Also of note, the project's located almost entirely west of 100th Street and away from Rosemont's more concentrated residential areas. Next slide, please. AVEP will bring significant jobs and economic benefits to Kern County. In fact, each of the 2 AVEP facilities will create approximately 300 construction jobs on average, contributing to a trained solar workforce long term. This project is also committed to hiring qualified local labor. And based on information provided by IBEW, First Solar's projects have already created over 800 jobs just for Kern County residing IBEW workers. And lastly, AVEP will also generate millions in taxes and fees that will be paid to the county. Next slide. While you're likely aware of the many environmental benefits renewable energy provides, it's worth emphasizing that projects like AVEP are able to generate clean electricity for over 100,000 average California homes each year. while using very little precious water resources. And on top of meeting environmental protection requirements, AVEP's also voluntarily joining in with other solar developers and entering into an agreement with the National and Kern Audubon to benefit nesting and foraging Swainson's hawk in the Antelope Valley by providing $150,000 for a conservation plan and funds. Next slide. So in closing, we believe AVEP is an excellent addition to Kern County's growing renewable energy portfolio. The project's well-sited, will generate significant benefits for the county with minimal impact, and has broad support from a variety of stakeholders in the community. It's for these reasons that we respectfully request the board approve the project. Thanks for your time, and we'd now be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the board?
Thank you.
Supervisor Scribner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This project's in my district, so Madam Clerk, we don't have any public comment on this.
Mr. Scribner, through the chair, we do have public comment. So now would be the time to open the public hearing?
Yeah, that's fine. I was just wanting to see if we had any questions for our presenter.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we can go ahead and open the public hearing now. Or is there anybody wishing to speak?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, we have 6 voice messages, and we'll go ahead and play those now, and then we'll hear from the 6 members of the public who want to address the board via teleconference.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Peters and fellow supervisors. My name is Richard Chapman, R-I-C-H-A-R-D, C-H-A-P-M-A-N, and the President and CEO of the Kern Economic Development Corporation, calling in to support the AVEP solar project, which is agenda item number 5 in the afternoon session. Kern EDC's mission is to cultivate and promote Kern County's balanced opportunities for business, and we work to create a strong and diverse economy for the region. We take pride in promoting Kern County as the energy capital of the U.S. and support the Rabbit Brush and Chaparral projects, which will create approximately 250 megawatts of solar energy and provide up to 300 local construction jobs, as well as indirect and induced employment. And these jobs are critical during these times. Indeed, the March 2021 unemployment numbers were over 11%. Thank you again for your time and consideration.
Hi, this is Johnny Kanji, J-O-H-N-N-Y, Kanji, C-A-N-G-E-Y. I've been an iron worker for 25 years, 21 years in the field, 4 years as a business agent. I'm actually also a planning commissioner for the city of Buena Park. I also sit chair of the Centralia School District Measure N bond. In the last 5 to 6 years, due to all the solar projects in Kern County and Antelope Valley, the iron workers were able to give careers to residents in the community, about 350. It's kind of where we're at right now. We brought these people in from Cerro Coso Community College, Tehachapi High School, Antelope Valley Youth Build Charter School in Palmdale, American Job Center of California in Palmdale, Federal Conservation Camp in Palermo, helmets to hard hats. You know, that's our military, our ex-military, looking for a career after their time served. Women, minorities, and others in and around Kern County. We've indentured them into a 4-year apprenticeship program where they're being trained, professionally trained in the ironworker field. We started a scholarship program through the Antelope Valley College, through the weld shop. But just calling to say we support the AVEP Rabbit Brush Solar Project. This can potentially put 100 more people from the community to work, and more importantly, give more career opportunities. Again, just asking, I think this would be a great thing for our community, guys. So iron workers are 100% in support. Thank you very much.
My name is Frederick Viznicki, F-R-E-D-E-R-C-K-V-I-S-V-E-D-K-I. I'm a Kern County resident. I'm calling about agenda number 5, the Rabbit Brush Solar Project. I'm in strong favor of it. I have children who live up here. These solar projects have afforded me to stay home as a father and spend time raising my children. Spend our money in this community. lot of money for our community. Again, I'm in favor of agenda number 5, the Rabbit Brush Solar Project. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Good evening, Board. This is Gary George, Garry George of National Audubon Society, regarding the Rabbit Brush and Chaparral Solar Projects, item number 5 in the afternoon session. Leeward Renewable Energy has entered into an agreement with Audubon and Kern Audubon to contribute to the Conservation Fund for Swainson's Hawk in the Antelope Valley. This contribution is not mitigation, nor is it in lieu of mitigation. It is voluntary, and we support this contribution. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brock Nielsen, BROCKNIELSEN. I'm leaving a message about agenda number 5. It's the Rabbit Bruce 250 megawatt. I'm in support of this. I'm an iron worker. I've been in the trade for about 5 years now. Loving every minute of it. Really turned my life around. Commuting up and down the hill down to LA for work. I miss a lot with my first child. I miss a lot of games, a lot of firsts. I'm expecting a second, and having this work close to home would make it make me a little more active father. I wouldn't miss so many firsts, and it'd mean a lot to spend more time with the family, a lot less wear and tear, and just enjoying work around the hometown.
Hi, my name is Anthony Sarabia, Anthony. Last name Sarabia, S-A-R-A, B as in Bravo, I-A. I'm calling regards of agenda number 5, the rabbit job. I'm in support of it. It brings jobs closer to home where I could be a full-time father, be home with my kids instead of driving to L.A. every day. And I could be closer with my kids. I love ironworking. I buy here. I live out here. Yeah. So I'm in support of it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, we will now hear from those speakers who are have called in, and we will first hear from Brian Holt. Mr. Brian Holt, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon. This is Brian Holt, BRIANHOLT. I'm representing IBEW Local 428 and calling in strong support of these projects. We always appreciate the opportunity to highlight the successes we've had with local hire on these projects and to stress the importance of the training opportunities they provide for our apprentices. Our program has more than doubled in recent years because of these renewable projects, and we look forward to this trend continuing. So on behalf of the nearly 1,000 Kern County residents IBEW Local 428 represents, we strongly ask you to concur with the staff's recommendation and approve these projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Spalding. Mr. Spalding, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board. Mr. John Spalding, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board. Mr. Chairman, we'll get back to Mr. Spalding. Let's now go to Emily Tanaka. Emily Tanaka, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Good afternoon. Can you hear?
I think you might need to unmute. Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Emily Tanaka. I'm a certified law student with the University of California, Irvine Environmental Law Clinic. I'm on the call with my supervising attorney, Professor Michael Robinson Dorn. We respectfully urge the Board of Supervisors to not certify the DEIR for this project and to instead return the matter to the Planning Department to conduct necessary surveys to identify the significant impacts on the threatened Swainson's hawk and adopt all feasible mitigation measures as required by CEQA. I will address two reasons why the DEIR should not be certified today. First, under CEQA, the EIR must identify the project's significant effects on the environment. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Swainson's Hawk Survey Protocol recommends at least 2 surveys be conducted. However, the county has only conducted a single survey in 2019 and no surveys since then. With a lack of recent data and failure to adhere to the survey protocols, the DEIR fails to identify the significant effects on the environment as CEQA requires. Second, under CEQA, the DEIR fails to adopt all feasible mitigation measures available for the Swainson's hawk. CEQA requires the county to mitigate the significant effects on the environment of projects whenever it is feasible to do so, and mitigation is feasible here. In response to compensatory mitigation recommendations from CDFW, a trustee agency, the staff report stated the compensatory mitigation was infeasible when applying the measure to all proposed solar projects in Kern County. But for the project at hand, compensatory mitigation is feasible and under CEQA is therefore required. The shrinking amount of foraging and nesting ground is the result of many reasons, including rapid development without proper mitigation. The county must adopt mitigation measures for this project to address the significant impacts on the Swainson's hawk under CEQA. Overall, the DEIR fails to comply with CEQA for the reasons stated. We respectfully ask that the board send the DEIR back to the Planning Department so that it may undertake additional required reviews and propose feasible mitigation consistent with the county's duties under CEQA.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tom Egan. Mr. Tom Egan, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
California Desert Representative for Defenders of Wildlife. County planning staff has affirmed that the state's Wildlife Trust Authority, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Defenders have recommended the project mitigate for the loss of suitable habitat for any portion of the project that is within 5 miles of an active Swainson's hawk nest, and to conduct sufficient surveys to detect such nests in order to fully mitigate the incidental take of this threatened species. Planning staff have also affirmed Swainson's hawk nests within 2 miles of the project. New data indicates new nesting activity even closer. Yet planning staff have ignored numerous recommendations on how to fully mitigate Swainson's hawk impacts associated with this project and instead have dismissed reasonable mitigation used for countless other at-risk wildlife species due to lack of nexus and infeasibility. The county and the public cannot even know the nexus or the harm involved without undertaking appropriate surveys undertaken to gauge a level of impact. Staff also maintains that fully mitigating impacts to Swainson's hawk in the county's discretionary solar energy permitting is not feasible due to the rapidly urbanizing region and human population growth in Antelope Valley, and that there is not enough available agricultural land for habitat acquisition, further arguing that such mitigation is not needed as there is protected federal lands on Edwards Air Force Base where no Swainson's hawk nesting occurs. Staff have also opened that the project area may support some nesting habitat and the species may nest nearby, that the species only forages in suitable habitat adjacent to their nest sites and shows high site fidelity, returning year after year if habitat is not bulldozed for solar panels. However, staff have erroneously premised their conclusion on the basis that this land is not located next to water or agricultural areas, so it could not possibly be habitat for Swainson's hawk. Staff have also erroneously opened that there is not enough available mitigation land in Antelope Valley to support Swainson's hawk habitat loss acquisition, even if this project's impacts to a listed species were fully mitigated according to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife recommendations and the California Endangered Species Act. This was apparently based on a supposition that the Antelope Valley adjudication mandates step-downs for agricultural water use in coming years, that there will be less agricultural land in production, and that no human-altered landscape preferable by Swainson's hawk will be available, and that not all of this reduced agricultural land was suitable for Swainson's hawk foraging or for sale. Well, believe it or not, before agricultural development, pronghorn antelope roamed Antelope Valley in the thousands. Swainson's hawk nested in isolated Joshua trees, juniper, and Fremont cottonwood just fine. And the desert scrub beneath and adjacent to these nest trees contained certainly sufficient foraging habitat to support nesting, which continues in the dwindling suitable habitat that remains in the valley today. In fact, Swainsons will fly over 18 miles from an active nest site in search of abundant prey, but will probably not fly 30-plus miles to Edwards Air Force Base to feed babies at Willow Springs and Rosamond. Arguing that only preferred agricultural areas adjacent to a declining number of historic nest trees are the only suitable foraging habitat does not make biological sense. Further, not fully mitigating impacts when there are feasible ways of doing so is simply wrong and violates the California Endangered Species Act. For these reasons outlined above and in previous comment letters submitted by both Defenders and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Defenders respectfully urges the Kern County Board of Supervisors to not certify the AVEP Solar Project DER until the county undertakes necessary surveys to identify significant impacts of the project on Swainson's hawk and adopt reasonable, feasible alternative mitigation measures to mitigate harm on this threatened species. The Board of Supervisors should, therefore, return the DER to the Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Department to resolve issues with the California listed threatened Swainson's hawk, with instructions for the department to require new surveys for Swainson's hawk within the proposed project footprint that conforms with California Energy Commission and California Department of Fish and Game's protocols, and revise environmental documentation accordingly. 2, require compensatory mitigation for loss of foraging habitat at a minimum of 2-to-1 ratio for the specific recommendations outlined by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and California Energy Commission to be acquired specifically within Antelope Valley, not the Central Valley, where the associated Swainson's hawk impacts are being generated to fully mitigate take of Swainson's hawk and its habitat associated with the project. 3, require mitigation for the loss of suitable habitat within the project area that is within 5 miles of any active nest at a 2-to-1 ratio. 4, require compensatory mitigation for loss of nesting trees at a minimum of 3-to-1 ratio if these trees are subsequently bulldozed. And 5, require a monitoring and mitigation plan for the Swainson's hawk, given the depletion of the species habitat and the continuous development in Antelope Valley. I might also add, Ms. Oviatt mistakenly stated that Defenders claimed a CEQA basis or requirement for regional planning. This is not true. We do believe, however, that bioregional planning is smart planning, and Ms. Oviatt apparently does not. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. The next speaker is Michael Robinson Dorn. Mr. Robinson Dorn, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Supervisors. My name is Michael Robinson Dorn. I'm a clinical professor at law at UC Irvine School of Law, where I direct the Environmental Law Clinic. As you might expect, the Environmental Law Clinic and our clients do not often find ourselves speaking against the approval of a renewable energy project. When we do, it's because there's been a fundamental legal failure. And as you've heard today from Defenders and seen in the comments from CDFW and Defenders, such a failure exists here. The good news, Supervisors, is that these failures can be fixed. And to be clear, solar energy projects, including AVEP, can move forward in Kern County. But as CDFW and Defenders of Wildlife have documented, and the DEIR and the staff report conclusion regarding the potential for impacts on the Swainson hawk is based on incomplete and out-of-date data, and data that does not follow the CDFW protocols. In short, the county has failed to conduct the necessary studies to determine the impact of this project on the Swainson's hawk. And without knowing the specific impacts of this project, the DEIR cannot possibly assess and propose feasible mitigation measures that CEQA requires. A voluntary agreement, as you've heard, is not mitigation under CEQA and is not in lieu of mitigation under CEQA. Rather than rushing to certify the EIR and approve the AVEP project today, with all the attendant legal risks associated with certifying an EIR with glaring errors, we respect that you hold this matter over and we respectfully request, that you hold this matter over and return it to the Planning and Natural Resources Department to allow the department and staff to conduct the required surveys and to include feasible mitigation measures, all as required by CEQA.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charles Holloway. Mr. Holloway, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Can you guys, my name's Charles Holloway. It's Holloway. I work for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and we provided a comment letter earlier this month, but we didn't have all the information we needed, I think, to make some real good comments. They were real general regarding construction, coordinating with our engineers and things like that, since the proposed project will be on both sides of a major utility corridor that we utilize. This transmission line corridor has a 500 kV DC line that brings a tremendous amount of energy down from the Columbia River Basin area or gorge area and to Southern California for Edison, DWP, Pasadena, Burbank, and other utilities, as well as 3 230 kV lines that are dedicated to renewable energy and hopefully future energy storage. And we're concerned regarding the crossing in this corridor, which is a little over 1,000 feet. Want to be assured or have the developer, first of all, we're not opposed to the project, but we do have some concerns that I think need to be addressed, and they need to coordinate with us regarding grading and construction, as well as drainage issues. A lot of times developers, the drainage ends up in our corridors around our footings, and we want to prevent things like that. There has been a concern raised by some engineers. I'm not sure how big an issue it is, but the heat that can radiate from these panels, I understand, can impact the conductors, which, the wires of towers, and heat's an issue. It can limit capacity, the carrying capacity on these transmission lines. So we'd hope they'd be far enough away from the conductors to mitigate that. Probably the other thing, it's an issue with DWP, but I think it should be a concern to Kern County as well, is there aren't a whole lot of corridors to bring energy from this renewable energy rich resource area in Kern County, as well as future energy storage, which is the only way we're going to make renewable energy work and carry or transport that energy down into the load centers in the Los Angeles basin. And if the development, especially I saw a little sliver of the proposed project on the east side, I'm a little concerned that, we're concerned that you're going to restrict any future development in that corridor. And at some point, and I'm not aware of any proposed lines through there, although we are going to be upgrading the line here in the near future. And we're going to later this year, early next year, we're building a large substation in the Rosemont area just north of this proposed project to interconnect renewable energy and take it south or west into the Los Angeles area. And there's going to be probably a need in the future for an additional line. And I know a lot of agencies, especially in the federal government, try to allow corridors rather than new lines just proliferating all throughout the communities or desert. And we would, I guess, if we had an ask, is maybe a 300 or 400 foot buffer, maybe on both sides, or at least on maybe the east side of our transmission lines for future development. Because, we're all have the goal of trying to reach, 100% renewable energy and get off fossil fuels, and Kern County is rich in that resource. But you have to be able to get it to market. With that, I don't have any other comments.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Spalding. Mr. Spalding, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board. Mr. Chairman, I do see that Mr. Spalding has called in. However, I don't know if he's not able to unmute his phone by pressing *6. I could ask him to try and leave the call and call again and see if we can get his comments. We'll attempt from my office to reach him and see if he can call back in. But at this point, that does conclude public comment unless we can get Mr. Spalding back on the line.
Great, thank you. Okay, before we close the public hearing, are there any questions or comments from the board? Oh, I'm sorry, were you buzzing in there?
I was. Chairman Peters, could I have 5 minutes to prepare a response from staff, please?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, we'll go ahead and just take a few minute break, and then we'll come back at shortly before 3:15. Okay, we're going to go ahead and reconvene. I believe, or do we have anybody else to speak before we close the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, let me check one. Let me check one more time.
Okay, thank you.
No, I don't have any other speakers, so that concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. And first, I'd like to go to Director Oviatt for her response for the public comment.
Thank you so much. First, I'd like to respond to the Swenson Hawk comments. The assertion that protocol surveys were not done is inaccurate. As described in the final EIR, Swenson Hawk protocol surveys were conducted for a 5-mile radius surrounding the project in 2017, 2018, and 2019, pursuant to California Department of Fish and Wildlife recommended protocol guidance. The results of that have been extensively provided to you in both the final EIR and the addendum information that you received today. I would like to note that the following mitigation measures have been imposed that will support mitigation for the Swenson Hawk mitigation measure 4.4-1, 4.4-2, 4.4-3, 4.4-4, 4.4-5, 4.4-8, 4.4-9, and 4.4-12. These include, prior to pre-construction, that additional Swenson's Hawk nest surveys will also be conducted, as well as avoidance measures. The comments continue to refer to a draft EIR. Your board is not considering a draft environmental impact report. You are considering a final environmental impact report. On March 25th, 2021, the response to comments was provided as required by law to the Planning Commission. Comment letter 1, which was from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, was extensively responded to, and we've received no letter since that March response to comments. In addition, Defenders of Wildlife's letter, which was comment letter 7, 7A through 7Q, are all responses to their comments. The assertion that we are not proceeding by law is inaccurate. This final EIR fully conforms with the requirements of CEQA. There is a nexus issue that even CEQA requires when it comes to imposing mitigation. There is no evidence in the record that this project will replace foraging habitat to the extent that they should then compensate with over 5,000 acres, which is what is being requested by Defenders of Wildlife, of replacement lands. We have provided extensive information on the infeasibility, if we were to require that, in regards to the lack of a nexus and the lack of legal authority to impose it, as well as the difficulties in finding those lands in the Antelope Valley, which has been specifically been noted by defenders in their request. In addition, the project itself is actually going to mitigate the impact of climate change on the Swenson hawk and other species. And by itself, these renewable energy projects contribute to a decrease in the impacts on the species in the future. There is a balance that even CEQA requires between mitigation and the impacts of the project. Your board is being asked to make a statement of overriding consideration that the economic, social, and climate change contributions of this project outweigh the potentially significant impacts. I would like to address Mr. Holloway's comments from the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. We have a long relationship with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. We note that they did submit a letter on the response to comments, and we provided a response. Apparently, in these COVID times, they missed sending us an email to let us know ahead of this hearing that they had concerns. Based on our past coordination with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, staff is recommending a change to the conditions of approval for 2 of these conditional use permits. There are 2 conditional use permits because of the zone map numbers. For this is the Chaparral, Mr. Murphy, the Chaparral project, which is bisected by the LADWP line. So in this case, we are going to be amending our recommendation to include a new condition. This is condition 8E for conditional use permit 1, map 231-18. It reads, prior to final occupancy approval, the following conditions shall be verified by the planning and building inspector and shall be continuously maintained while this permit is active. 8E reads, provide documentation that any coordination that is necessary has been complied with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, LADWP, and that all LADWP required permits and approvals for entry and encroachment into LADWP property or easements has been completed. I note that this very same wording will also be noted as 8E, conditional use permit 33, map 233. Did I have that wrong? 232. CUP 33, map 232. Provide documentation that any coordination that is necessary is completed with Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, LADWP. All LADWP required permits and approvals for entry and encroachment into LADWP property or easements has been completed. Regards to the request by the LADWP that we provide them a future corridor, staff is not recommending this. This is private property. If the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power wishes to expand their transmission lines, they can go and negotiate with these owners and negotiate with this solar project for a future transmission line. I am available for any other questions, but we believe that we have satisfied all of the requirements of CEQA. There is a slightly revised recommendation when your board is ready. That completes my additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Aviat. Are there any supervisors that wish to speak on this? Supervisor Scribner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said earlier, this project's in my district, so I'll go ahead and take first crack at this and then be interested in any comments that my colleagues have. But Ms. Oviatt, thank you for addressing the comments from the speakers that called in under public comments. I appreciate you thoroughly addressing the concerns that were brought up by them. Just in general with this project, I'm happy to see a project that I think is so compatible with the surrounding land uses, which are other solar projects, and so obviously this is a compatible use, and it's also properly distanced from residential uses as well. And so, Ms. Oviatt, if you would read the staff's recommendation, I'd be prepared to make a motion.
The recommendation is to certify the environmental impact report, adopt section 15091 findings of fact and section 15093 statement of overriding considerations, adopt mitigation measure monitoring program, adopt resolutions, suggested findings, and ordinances approving specific plan amendments to map code designations of the Willow Springs specific plan as requested, adopt resolutions, suggested findings, and ordinances approving zone changes as requested, approve conditional use permits subject to conditions as revised by staff, approve amendment to the circulation element of the Willow Springs specific plan as requested, adopt resolutions and recommended findings approving non-summary vacations of the requested easements as requested, subject to accepting and reserving a public utility easement for any existing utilities, direct the clerk of the board not to record resolutions until written verification has been provided by the Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Department indicating the necessary applicable access easements have been recorded by the applicant to ensure adequate legal access remains to public roads for all affected parcels, approve the memorandum of understanding agreement, and recommend the Board of Supervisors chairman to sign.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, before we vote, do we need to hear, apparently the caller that was having an issue during public comment is back on the line? I'm not sure.
No, actually, he is not back on, so
Okay,
public comment
then-
is over.
Okay, then please cast your votes.
I need Supervisor Maggard and Supervisor Scrivener to vote. Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Okay, well, having no additional items to consider, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, May 11th at 9 a.m.
Motion.
Without objection, we're adjourned.
tuberculosis testing, birth control options, and we have sexual health screenings for sexually transmitted diseases, and we offer treatment on site. And we can also sign individuals up for any insurance plans if they don't have insurance at the time of their visit.